In August 1942, I received my naturalization papers. I was an American citizen. The country had been good to me. It had given me wealth and an international reputation. I was grateful. While I didn't like what I conceived to be the mediocre character of some of my pictures, or most of them, still I was making them. Others would have liked to make even these westerns, quickies, and box office films. I was surrounded with lovely women. I had a beautiful house. I was finished with Lily, I thought. Why complain? I couldn't have it better. Part 5. Headhunters of California, 1942 to 1943. On this particular night, late in 1942, I was alone in my Mulholland study. My valet, Alexandre, came in, trembling like an autumn leaf. Two men were at the door, he said in French. They had shown him some official papers, also a policeman's badge. What do they want? They want to see you. I laughed. What the hell are you shaking for? They're not here to see you. Go on, let 'em in. In came two ducks. They were in plain clothes, but I could have told on the street 100 feet from them they were police. Plain-clothes men usually look more like police than uniformed cops. You get to be able to make a fine distinction like that after you've had your share of contact with these necessary gentlemen. They were quite pleasant. Come on in, gentlemen. Have a seat, I said. Did they want some coffee or drinks, perhaps? They said yes, they'd have coffee. I didn't know then never to talk to two policemen if you're alone. I know it now. Two coppers will outweigh anything you have to say. After a minute or two, one of them said, Mr. Flynn, we have a very serious charge against you. What had I done? Well, your accuser is in juvenile hall, and we've come to take a statement from you. What's it all about? A pause. Then, statutory rape. My smile disappeared in a hurry. Rape? I didn't know what statutory rape meant. I didn't know the difference between statutory rape and rape. Rape to me meant picking up a chair and hitting some young lady over the head with it and having your wicked way. I hadn't done any of these things. I don't know what you're talking about. It concerns a Miss Betty Hanson, and we're holding you. I've never heard of her. Betty Hanson? Who is she? She's a teenager, and she's been picked up for vagrancy. Among her possessions, we found your phone number, and she has claimed that you had sexual intercourse with her on a certain date. Where was this supposed to have happened? We're not supposed to tell you, Mr. Flynn, but it happened at the house rented by your friends, Stephen Raphael, Bruce Cabot, and Freddie McAvoy. This was a big rambling place with a tennis court owned by Colleen Moore of silent films. The sporting crowd foregathered there to bet on tennis matches, to swim, play cards, ping pong, poker, amusements practically always instigated by Freddie. It was a bachelor's house, rented by famous and or moneyed bachelors, and it was a place I frequented. Usually it cost me a lot to go there. My friends took my money like Jesse James robbed a bank. They were skillful card players, congenital handicappers. In any case, there were always lovely girls around. But for the life of me, I couldn't recall any Betty Hanson with whom I was supposed to have gone to bed, whom I had raped. What am I supposed to do? I asked them. We'd like you to come down with us to juvenile hall and identify the girl. But I don't know any such girl. Well, look, they said, we just want to clear this matter up. It might be nothing. It might be something. We don't know. She says that you were all playing tennis. She seemed to know everybody at the house there, all your friends. She gave a detailed description of the act. What did she say? She said she could even describe you. You got undressed, but you kept your socks on. Good God! Tell me, what does she look like? She described you as sitting on your chair, then you took her upstairs, and all of a sudden, a picture flashed before me, and I saw again the scene that was behind this horrible accusation. I could remember somebody sitting on the edge of my chair. Many of the girls had sat on the edge of the chair or around it. I recalled this particular one being over friendly, and I recollected getting up out of the chair. "You don't mean that frowsy little blonde? Is she a frowsy little blonde?" "Yes, that's the one." Those were the worst words I could have ever said, because eventually they were repeated to her, and being feminine, she naturally resented this description. Also, as it turned out, she had been threatened by the authorities with 4 years of detention in juvenile hall, and with these two things she would swear to anything, and she did. "Look," I said to the two dicks, "I must call my lawyer right away." "You don't need a lawyer." When you hear a cop tell you that, brother, always get the lawyer. "This is my house," I said. "Sit down, have another coffee or drink, whatever you want." My mind was in absolute turmoil. I called up Robert Ford, a young Irish lawyer just beginning his practice. He was the son of a famous lawyer, a fine guy, a guardian of my interests. "Bob, there are a couple of boys here from—" I turned to them and asked them where they were from. "From downtown Los Angeles Police Department," they said. "That's where they're from, Bob. Downtown Police Department. What am I to do?" "They want me to go down to juvenile hall. They said I screwed somebody." "I know I didn't. It's very late, and I don't know if you're in bed, but if you are, Bob, I don't give a damn. Get out of it. Get on down here. They said they'll arrest me if I don't come under my own steam." It was late at night, but down we went to juvenile hall. That was a long ride, down in silence now. No more fishing from them, no more biting from me. Why I should have been called upon at this hour, I don't know. They could have waited till the daytime, but I discovered then that there is sometimes a narrow line between how crooks and police find it necessary to work. Get the guy when he's tired. His mind isn't with it. As we entered juvenile hall, I asked, "You won't mind waiting till my attorney gets here?" "Oh, he's here already, waiting outside." Bob took over from there. "What's the charge?" he asked, inside a gloomy-looking office. They told him. He wanted to know what was the idea of their bringing me down here. Under the law, they explained, the accuser and the accused must confront each other. They brought in a girl, dressed in some kind of uniform which they put on kids unfortunate enough to get into this kind of place. At once I recognized her as the one who had indeed sat on the arm of my chair. To my utter astonishment, I said, "It can't be." I mean, she was gruesome looking. They said to her, "Will you repeat the charge?" She hung her head and said, "Yes." He took me upstairs. She talked in a low, monotonous voice, as if by rote. They had been playing tennis. Then they played some cards. He took me upstairs, undressed me, and then he. She ran out of words. "You know what I told you?" she said to the police. Bob Ford asked, "Did you put up a fight?" No, why should I?" They turned to me. "Well, what do you say about this, Mr. Flynn?" "Utterly untrue. Certainly I met her. True, she was at the house. I don't know how she got there." Actually, I was thinking very fast. I did remember that there was a young fellow called Savau, somebody who was more or less in charge of inviting girls to this house for the boys who were living in it. I'm not suggesting that this was a den of animals. On the contrary, it was mainly devoted to sports and gambling, but it was a bachelor's house, and ladies rarely object to visiting a bachelor's house in Hollywood. The officer said, "That's all." The girl was let out. I drove home with Bob. "How did I get into all of this?" "Did you or didn't you?" he asked me. I said no. I believe you. The Los Angeles District Attorney's Office apparently decided that they had a very weak case against me on Betty Hansen, but, having leveled this charge, they got a bit frantic. They dug up another girl whom I knew, a certain Peggy Satterlace, and my lawyer phoned me to get set for a second charge. At 2 o'clock in the morning, they went to the nightclub where this girl was dancing, brought her down to headquarters, and, by whatever means and through whatever threats they used, they got her to tell of her meeting with me a year earlier. It had taken her a year to discover that she also had been raped by me. Now there was no question that I knew this second young lady very well, and I did not deny it. Peggy Satterless had been out on my yacht, the Sirocco, for a weekend. If you meet a young lady who, in fact, invites herself for a trip on your yacht, I'd love to cruise, she said, in the vernacular unknown to yachtsmen. Knowing in advance full well what the risks are, who the hell asks her for her birth certificate, especially when she is built like Venus? And if afterwards she tells you she has had the most wonderful time in her life, who's been hurt? What is all the fuss about? Why international headlines? Who approaches a prospective sweetheart by asking her to whip out her birth certificate or driver's license or show a letter from her mother? Naturally, I had no knowledge of how old she was, nor did I know the difference between rape and statutory rape. Statutory rape, as it is now defined, is actually a 19th century improvement on an older law designed to protect infant girls against degenerates. The law is quite clear. If you have had carnal knowledge of a person or persons under the age of 18, you can go to jail for 5 years or more, whether or not, and this is important, she consented. It doesn't matter if you had no way of knowing she was under 18, or even if she actually tells you she is over the so-called age of consent. Broadly interpreted, it could even mean that should a powerful girl under the age of 18 knock down a man, sit on his chest, put a knife to his jugular vein, and say that if he didn't overpower her, she would cut his throat, he could still get 5 years in jail for doing as ordered. That would be stretching the law, but that is actually what the law says. While this hadn't happened to me, they could definitely prove that Betty Hansen was underage. She was 16. Yet, to this day, nobody knows for certain how old Peggy Sarletts was, although it appeared later, from a driver's license she owned, that she was 21. So here I was faced with 4 charges of statutory rape, 2 on each count, and scheduled to go before the grand jury 2 days later. The district attorney's office lost no time in giving the story to the newspapers. It caused, at once, national, even international headlines. Errol Flynn charged with rape. I didn't sleep much in the period before the grand jury session. I tried to imagine what effect my troubles would have on my father, who was dean of the Faculty of Science at Belfast. What would my mother, my sister, think of it? Crowds swarmed around the courthouse. The people were strung out in front of the place, and I wanted to shrink into the ground with shame. The mere idea of force or rape was unthinkable. Who had to hit somebody over the head with a chair or trip them up or smuggle them across a border? On the contrary, where was my baseball bat to ward them off? Women banged on the doors of Mulholland House like ice drops in a hailstorm. I had to bolt the doors against them. I had proposals of marriage every day. I got letters from women setting up dates, hours, and places where they would be waiting for me, ripe and ready, and they didn't wait for a written reply. They went ahead with their plans, and when I wouldn't show up, I suppose they were disappointed. But this wasn't New Guinea, where I was alone with palm trees. I was a big Hollywood star, and female flack burst around me all the time. So what the hell was this charge of rape? Somebody was out to put the screws into me. Who was it? What was it? Still, I held my head up. I must go into this with a fairly dignified demeanor. It came back to me now, as a younger man. It came back to me how, as a younger man, I had set out to acquire a dignified look, the manner of a man of means, of stature and pride, how I had deliberately squared my shoulders, stood erect, held my head up imperially, and practiced moving about with a certain vector, in the belief that you can make yourself what you feel, what you want to be, that if you act great, you may become great. Now I needed this force again, needed to see over the heads of this crowd, of this situation, and face it with an air of courage, even if I didn't feel confident inside. The girls told their story to the grand jury. I told mine. Freddie McAvoy gave evidence supporting what I said about my knowledge of the Hanson girl, and the grand jury was swift about it. They saw something stank. They promptly returned what is called a no true bill. This meant they believed me, not the prosecution. So, rather quickly, it was over with. Freddie and I went back to Mulholland House. The load was off my mind. We celebrated my acquittal by opening a bottle of champagne. Freddie said, "Christ, you're lucky, pal." Still, it had been turbulent, and I tramped around my place, loosing profanity at the walls, at the mystic forces that seemed to have been out to get me. It was all goddamn torture, and I hollered, "To hell with Christ!" Freddie, a devout Catholic, when he felt like being so, shouted back, "That's blasphemy. Don't say that. You'll be sorry." "To hell with God, too. This is a crooked thing." I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake, hanging around the fireplace, wondering why I had been singled out for this business. Maybe I shouldn't have cursed God.